I'll tell you what, when you talk about these amazing things that God has done, to me, it just, I can't get enough of it. So I hope that comes through, and I hope that it's not a negative at all. Now, there were two things I asked you to do. One was to tell me how many moons Pluto had. Some of you found it. What is it? 5 moons. How many do we have, class? 1. Pluto is way smaller than we are, and it's got 5 moons. What's the matter with us? Well, I will tell you, it matters that we have only 1 moon that's about the size it is and the distance it is from our Earth and all the things that it does to help support life here. In fact, it is absolutely the case. If our moon weren't situated the way it is, we wouldn't be here, period. We don't need 5 moons. Neither does Pluto, but it's got it. Did any of you learn the names? No? Any of you? I don't hear any volunteers. The largest moon of Pluto is Charon, C-H-A-R-O-N. It's almost half the size of Pluto itself. Then there's Styx and Nix and Kerberos and Hydra. 3 of those moons were discovered by the New Horizon mission to Pluto by NASA that started in 2009. They shot a spaceship off from Cape Canaveral in 2009. 9 years later, it reached Pluto. And it passed the closest we've ever been to Pluto, and it found 3 new moons, as well as a bunch of other close-up pictures. I have a whole lecture I do on that topic. So if you're interested sometime, have me back, because I've got some others also that need to be talked about. I also ask kids and their families to make manuscripts. I have received 1. Anybody else have a manuscript tonight? I think there is 1, isn't there? Who has 1? Okay, well, I'll get it later, but raise your hand if you have a manuscript, do you? I love that. And here's another one. Good. And you have another one there? Okay. Well, please, would you make sure they come up and see me afterwards? And what I like is to get copies of them, because I'm making a book of manuscripts produced by children, because I think it's a special thing that you're doing that. And I hope it meant something to your families, that it was an idea to get across to your children how much work people had done to give us the Bible in this time. Okay. I think that's all my introductory remarks. So now I need my clicker. It's right here. And you see our topic tonight, class. We're going to talk about molecular machines. A fascinating topic about which we knew practically nothing as briefly ago as 30 years ago. So you're talking now about very current information that we knew nothing about before. And so I'm going to do this now because I'll forget it later. This is my latest book that I'm reading. It's called Epigenetics and the Architect. It's not even in my bibliography. I hadn't even gotten a chance to put it in there yet. Copyright date is this year, 2026. And it's written by Thomas Woodward and James P. Gills, MD. And their argument is, class, epigenetics is an even more powerful testimony to a designer than genetics. So I don't know if anybody in this room knows what epigenetics is. Probably not, because it's a fairly new topic. But epi is the idea is it's outside of or beyond genetics. There's a whole lot going on inside every cell of your body that is not directed by the DNA. So it's outside the genetic code. But it's doing all kinds of things. And it's so complex, folks. You think what I've been talking about so far is complicated? Bring me back and let me talk about epigenetics. Because it's more complicated. And it's also utterly amazing as to what your body, your living bodies are and do. So There's another book if you want to find something current and fascinating. And also these men who are scientists openly speaking about this shows design. It's powerful evidence for a creator. So you live in a time, class, in which the evidence from nature in God's book of nature is more powerful than it's ever been that he exists. All right. One other one while I'm here. If you've never heard of John Lennox, he's a famous mathematician of our time. He's got a book called God's Undertaker. You remember our lecture last night that said, "Is God dead?" He's written a book, God's Undertaker. He has revived God. He's not letting him die. John Lennox has debated Richard Dawkins. He's debated Christopher Hitchens. He's debated Daniel Dennett, the horsemen of the apocalypse, we call them for the new atheists. He's debated every one of them and defeated them soundly with the evidence for God. I love this man, math teacher, and openly creationist. So there's another wonderful book you ought to be reading. Okay. Let's have a word of prayer. Our good Father, we're so blessed to be together again this evening. Thank you for all these folks who've been so faithful to be a part of this series this week, who've listened so well. We pray, oh God, that through all of this we have become deeper and deeper impressed and in awe of your magnificence. And we pray that all of us will be better able not only to be on our knees in prayer before you and thankful that you've opened the gates of heaven for us, but also able to help others see the magnificence of the great God that we're privileged to serve. Bless our worship together tonight as we look at nature and its grand testimony of the great God we serve. We offer this prayer in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Last night we emphasized building proteins. You said that a few times, didn't you, the word proteins? And you hope you remember that what we did after we concluded all of that is to build one protein. Took a whole bunch of how much? Of what? You remember the number? It was over 2,000 different proteins required to build one protein. And every one of those proteins had to be built by that same process. So that means they had to be there already in order to build them. And that's not possible. So what you have is a testimony. Somebody built that, period. Tonight, I want to make it even more amazing because we want to talk about within that thing that proteins do are some machines. I showed you one last night. It's called the spliceosome. You remember that? Do you remember that there are over 200 different proteins in that one spliceosome? And it's a machine that does all kinds of things, snipping and editing. And by the way, I forgot to tell you this, even though it went an hour and 20 minutes. That one snippet, remember that has to copy the DNA and it becomes messenger RNA, and there it is, a strand. Then it snips out some of the introns and re-edits it. What we've learned, class, is that one strip of messenger RNA can produce up to 1,000 different proteins from that one strip by just reorganizing it. And the spliceosome does all the work reorganizing it. We didn't know that 20 years ago. So what we know now is there's a massive more amount of information packed into the DNA than we ever dreamed, because one little section can build up to 1,000 different proteins. I keep preaching last night's sermon again. Let's get at this one. Cells are molecular machines. The question is, did they evolve by small-scale changes over millions of years? Or were they designed? That's the question. Let's go to Romans 1 again. That's one more time. That's our biblical basis for this kind of a lesson. Verse 20 says, "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. That passage teaches in the Scriptures that you can see God without the Bible. You can see him by examining things that are designed. And so you can see that he has eternal power and divine nature, and that's the famous argument from design, which is what we've been doing all week. So that's the introduction. As I've said each time, I'm now going to close this book and turn our attention to God's other book. So class, welcome back to biochemistry. I want to introduce you tonight to molecular machines. Let's start back here though. I told you last night that natural theology was a class every college student took in England and other European countries in the 1800s. And one of the most famous books was William Paley's book, Natural Theology. And it had in it an argument about the Watchmaker. You remember this? We went over that briefly. Here's what I want to do with that tonight. I want to show you what Richard Dawkins does with that in this book, The Blind Watchmaker. Folks, this was a bestseller. Sold millions of copies all over the world. So I'm going to turn, let me just read a few things out of this to you. Out of the book by Richard Dawkins, and there's his picture. He's the professor of the public understanding of the sciences at Oxford University for this modern age. So I'm going to page 1, chapter 1. Here's the first sentence. We animals are the most complicated things in the known universe. So I think you understand from day 1, or from verse 1, where he's coming from. Next paragraph. Biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. So he recognizes from the beginning that in biology you're studying things that sure look like somebody designed this. That's what he said, isn't it? Then he spends 300 pages trying to convince you they were not designed. So let's go to page 3. The process by which an airliner came into existence is not fundamentally mysterious to us. Humans built it. Would you say amen, class? Okay. The systematic putting together of the parts to a purposeful design is something we know and understand. And we have experienced it at first hand, even if only with our childhood mechano and erector sets. Did you kids build with erector sets? That's a passe, isn't it? Then he says, what about our own bodies? Each one of us is a machine, like an airliner, only much more complicated. Were we designed on a drawing board too, and were our parts assembled by a skilled engineer? The answer is no. It's a surprising answer. And we have known and understood it only for a century or so. When Charles Darwin first explained the matter, many people either would not or could not grasp it. I myself refused flatly to believe Darwin's theory when I first heard about it as a child. Now I'm skipping over. The Watchmaker of my title is borrowed from a famous treatise by the 18th century theologian William Paley. His Natural Theology, published in 1802, is the best known exposition of the argument from design. Always the most influential of the arguments for the existence of God. It is a book I greatly admire, for in his own time, its author succeeded in doing what I am struggling to do now. So I want to make sure you got me on that. Dawkins is saying, I appreciate the way Mr. Paley did that because he did it in such a way as to convince folks. And I'm doing that too, he says. He had a point to make. He passionately believed it. And he spared no effort to ram it home clearly. So I like to read that because that's my excuse for yelling. Have I been enthusiastic? That's not a mistake. Because I have a point to make, and I'm passionate about it, and I want to ram it home. And I learned long since that in any audience of this size or any size, if you don't reach out and grab somebody, you didn't make your point. That's part of why I want you to answer things when I ask you. It helps drill it into your mind. But folks, the point I want to make here is this book sold millions of copies as he tried to ram home what I'm about to read you. And I'm saying it's totally wrong, but it's what you hear. So it needs to be rammed home, the falsity of it. Paley's argument is made with passionate sincerity and is informed by the best biological scholarship of his day. But it is wrong, gloriously and utterly wrong. The analogy between a telescope and an eye, between a watch and a living organism is false. So he says you can't make the Watchmaker argument. That's a false argument. All appearances to the contrary. The only watchmaker in nature is the blind forces of physics, albeit deployed in a very special way. I hope you get that. He's saying all you need to produce all the living things you can observe, everything we've been talking about, and a whole lot more. All you need is the blind forces of physics acted on by natural selection. So he goes on to say, a true watchmaker has foresight. He designs his cogs and springs and plans their interconnections with a future purpose in his mind's eye. Natural selection, the blind, unconscious, let me see, I think I have this up here. See, we're down about the middle of that quote. Natural selection. The blind, unconscious, automatic process which Darwin discovered and which we now know, underline that, is the explanation for the existence and apparently purposeful form of all life. It has no mind. It has no mind's eye. It does not plan for the future. It has no vision, no foresight, no sight at all. If it can be said to play the role of a watchmaker in nature, it is the blind watchmaker. So what does this professor of the public understanding of sciences tell you? What nature teaches you, class, he would say, is that the blind forces of physics acted on by natural selection is sufficient to account for everything you see. There is nothing else. I'm letting that sink in. I have to turn over a few pages later. Let's see, this is on page 14. In his beautifully written book, The Creation, the Oxford physical chemist Peter Atkins begins. I'm quoting Peter Atkins, class, who's quoted in Dawkins' book. Peter Atkins is a world-renowned physical scientist. I shall take your mind on a journey. It is a journey of comprehension, taking us to the edge of space, time, and understanding. On it, I shall argue that there's nothing that cannot be understood, there is nothing that cannot be explained, and that everything is extraordinarily simple. A great deal of this universe does not need any explanation. Elephants, for instance. Once molecules have learned to compete and create other molecules in their own image, elephants and things resembling elephants will in due course be found roaming through the countryside. Did you catch that? You don't need to explain elephants. All you need to know is that at some point in time, molecules starting to be able to create other molecules, and over time, you're just going to get elephants. All you need is the blind forces of physics acted on by natural selection. That is the biggest fairy tale of the history of mankind. It's not so at all, nor does the evidence support that. He gives you 300 pages of trying to support that everything you think looks like it's designed was not designed. There was no purpose in it. Nobody was planning you or anything else that's alive. It just came about by natural causes, by forces that were already in existence. So that's what we're dealing with, class. I get passionate about that because that's as wrong as it can be, and kids are being taught this and brainwashed into believing it. And young people, it ain't so. So let's go to Darwin himself, because he quoted Darwin, didn't he? Darwin's the one that discovered natural selection, supposedly. Here's what Darwin said in his book on the origin of species. I have my worn copy of this book. If you haven't read this book, it's probably a book that has had more influence on humankind than any other text other than the Bible. Why do I say that? Because what he proposed in this book gave people a reason to give up on God that they thought was scientifically acceptable. And so what that did, class, over time, was it changed every subject in every college, because all of it was now going to be interpreted on the basis of scientific materialism. Nature is all there is. That changes everything, class. But one thing I like about this book is a good deal of this book, Darwin explains what's wrong with his theory. In other words, he gives critiques. Then he goes ahead and answers them, what he feels is the best of his ability. But he does critique himself. That's kind of a sign of an honest man, isn't it? I think. So one of his critiques is this one. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by, now watch the screen, by numerous, you see that one with yellow? Successive, critically important, slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Listen, if you're a Darwinian evolutionist, you do not believe in leaps. In fact, Darwin would say nature abhors leaps. Nature doesn't make changes like, boom, you got something brand new. No, that's not the way it works. He says the way nature does it is you get little tiny changes that could happen just naturally, and then nature selects the ones that should survive. And therefore, the next generations have other little changes that add up. They're successive, you see. And they add up over time, slight, numerous modifications, and eventually produce something that you started with. This is quite different, but it's done in a lot of small-scale changes over time. And nature selects in the process. Not God, nature selects. I hope you're with me, because this is only the foundation of all of modern-day evolutionary theory. Nobody has been able to come up with anything better than Darwin in this notion. So it's still foundational. And of course, Dawkins' book was one of the winners to support that. So I'd like to present Darwin with a organ that I don't believe any way in this world could have happened by that way, by that method. And there are thousands of them. How about this one? The single cell. I wrote out a quote here. This is George Henry Lewis in his book, The Problems of Life, copyright date 1887, page 38. Darwin published his book in 1859. This is 87, a number of years later. What did they think about a cell? Here he said, a cell is a microscopic lump of jelly-like substance of protoplasm. entirely destitute of texture and consequently destitute of organs. You with me? That was a common perception of a cell in the 1800s. It was a lump of jelly-like substance that had basically nothing in it. And is it hard to believe that that might have been formed by some natural cause? It was just a lump of stuff that happens to have a skin around it. So I would like to say to Mr. Darwin, may I present to you the modern day view of a cell. You see it before you in all of its splendor, except there's 1,000 things that aren't on that picture. Because the cell is a self-replicating nanoscale robot, and we know it well. It has all kinds of things going on in there. You say it doesn't have any organs in it? Well, it has all kinds of organs and machines that are busy doing things at an incredible rate of speed every second of your life in every cell of your body and everything else that's alive. Why do we call it self-replicating? It's because it can reproduce its entire self. That's why. That in itself is incredible. We're going to talk later tonight about mitosis. That's when one cell makes two identical cells out of itself. Before a cell in your body can make two copies of itself, it has to copy everything in it. So most of the time, your cell is building second copies of what's in you. That's called the interphase. About 95% of the time your cell is alive, it's copying itself and doing jobs while it's at it. About 5% of the time, it's actually dividing. I'm going to show you a video tonight of it dividing. And I'm going to show you the kinds of things it takes for that to happen. Okay? It's self-replicating, class. Every human cell and every cell of any kind of living things can reproduce itself. Looks like a design to me. Second, it's nanoscale. It's very, very tiny. I told you, a meter is about this long, divided into 1 billion equal parts, and one of those little parts is a nanometer. Did you know, class, that we now have engineers who are called nano-engineers? Because they're doing work in chemistry labs at the nano level, 1 billionth of a meter size. How do you do that? Well, you first get this little tiny milk stool. No. You have to have complex equipment, and it's really a complicated subject. But we are doing it. And at the end of my lecture, I'm going to introduce you to a world-famous nano-engineer. It's nanoscale. Thirdly, it's a robot because its activities are carried out unconsciously and automatically by precision molecular machines that follow ordinary physical laws. Folks, we are learning exactly how they work, and it's normal laws. But they're machines doing incredibly complex jobs like a robot. So did nature just produce that by itself? That's the question. Without any design. It seems incredible, doesn't it? I believe it is incredible because all the evidence we have is those kinds of things come as a result of intelligent interference or intelligent design. One of the great scientific discoveries of the 20th and 21st centuries is that even the simplest forms of life at the biochemical level contain massive amounts of digital information. I want to read you a quote. Our experience in the 21st century information revolution, you live in it, class, we're in the information age, suggests that the presence of functional information, especially in digital form, is one of those qualities that one should expect only if intelligent design and purpose had played a role in its origin. I believe that's right. And what I hope to show you is you've got digital information being used at an enormous speed to produce and maintain an untold number of molecular machines and complex processes all the time. It's everywhere. And if that's the case, I don't believe there's any other solution than to say somebody intelligent did that. Because we have no evidence that that comes about in any other way. So, the cell. It's time to revisit the argument from design. Now we're doing it at the nano level. Last night, we looked at the heavens, or Monday night. The macro level. There's design all over the place in the macro world. Now we're going down to the smallest things we know anything about, and there's design everywhere. Down there too. So what's a molecular machine? It's a natural device on the molecular scale with few exceptions made of what class? Yeah, good, weak but good. Able to convert chemical energy to produce linear or rotary motion, as well as controlling many biological functions. That's a molecular machine. What are some examples? Myoglobin is one of the simplest ones that was found early on. It's involved in oxygen storage in your muscles. I don't choose to talk about it tonight, but it's a huge protein. I'd love to show you a picture of it. I'm just not taking the time to do that. But it's got all kinds of features in it, and they use those features to be able to allow you to transport oxygen in your body. Without it, you would be dead. It's critically important. I'd like to talk a little bit about kinesins and dyneins. You see they're involved in cargo movement, cell division, and the beating of cilia and flagella. They're also involved in a lot of other things that we're not going to talk about. But I will tell you they are workers, both of them. So here's a picture of a kinesin walker. See this little guy right here? What do you think he's made of, class? Say it. Yeah, good. He's a busy little protein. Can you see he has feet? And this is called a microtubule, and kinesin walkers walk along microtubules. And if I had time tonight, I was going to take you to a website, but I want to give you something to do for fun. Kids, you want to write this down? You don't even have anything to write on. Just put it on your phone. Go look up YouTube, and it's titled A Day in the Life of a Kinesin Walker. And it's a cartoon showing you how much work a kinesin does. He's busy. Can you see the stuff he's carrying? It weighs about 100 times more than he does. Maybe more than that. He carries heavy stuff around your cell. Do you think it's important to move stuff from one place to another in a machine and in a business? Glenn has a pharmacy business. How many miles did you have people driving for you? 1 million miles in a year? Yeah. Was it important for you to be able to move this chemical to that place? Same true in the cell. And these guys are little tiny creatures, so the cell to them is like the state of Indiana, or maybe the United States. They're moving stuff around. And kinesin walkers are critically important, so are dyneins. But they are what, class? Yeah, proteins. Specialized proteins that do special jobs. All right, so here we go. This is the first of our 2 videos tonight, and this one is involving mitosis. I repeat, mitosis is when one cell makes duplicate copy of itself and you end up with 2 identical cells. You're going to watch. No, turn it on yet, Jacob. I'll tell you when. The 2 cells that are going to become, the one cell that's going to become 2 has to do a lot of work beforehand. So this video does not tell you one thing about all the work it did in 95% of its life. All it's telling you about is the division. the mitosis, which is just a part of what it does. But why I'm interested in that is because there's a bunch of little machines helping this happen. So we're going to watch, first of all, a picture of it, and then we're going to go back and we're going to watch a cartoon that takes you down inside. You can't see this with a normal type system, but you can see it on a cartoon if somebody draws it for you. All right, so Jacob, you're my man. You're going to stop and start at my command, right? And he did a great job last night too, didn't he? He really did. He was amazing. And if you went back there and tried that yourself, lots of luck, because it's not easy. All right, so here we go. Jacob, let's move. What you see here is the nuclear material of a cell. This is called the chromosomes, class. And it's the nuclear material, it's the DNA. And so what you see here is there are already 2 copies made. And so it's just splitting them apart. And that's what you're watching here. Okay, so stop right there just a second. Here's a glob of DNA, a bunch of chromosomes, and here's the other glob. So all this is doing is separating the copies that have already been made. Class, may I tell you just briefly, because we don't have time to go into this, it is a massive task to copy the entire genome in your cell. You have billions of pieces to DNA. The Human Genome Project was about 3.1 billion pieces that they mapped. The cell copies that. And class, what do you think it takes to make that happen? A lot of proteins. And do you know that once in a while, there's a mistake made in the copy process? And built into the process is a way to fix mistakes. And for most of the time when cells are copying their material and a mistake is made, most of them are fixed before you ever get to the next stage. That's part of the process. Looks like a plan, class. So that's already all been done. All we're doing here is now that the copies are made, we're making them separate. This is like the last phase in the process of mitosis. So here we go. Go ahead, please, Jacob. We're going to watch the thing finish. And once those are split out, it also splits the whole cell. So stop right there now. What before was one cell is 2 identical copies of the exact same thing. Class, that's just amazing. Utterly amazing. And it happens all the time. Let me interrupt myself right here and give you some statistics. I don't keep these in my head, so I'll write them down. Let me find my place here. All right, we're looking at mitosis. Here we go. Maybe I'll just ask you to take a guess. How many times do you think in your human body do you have mitosis happening, where a cell divides and becomes 2 cells? You want to take a guess? How many times per day do cells in your body mitose? That's not a verb, but I'm just made it up. About 1,350. Oh, 100,350. That's a pretty good guess. Anybody else? How about 25 to 50 billion with a B? Depends on what kind of cell it is and the features of it. But the best information I've learned is it's 25 to 50 human cells per day mitose. So would you say this is a significant operation I'm just telling you about? It's life-changing. Now, just for your information, the great majority of those that do that are blood cells. 86% is the best estimate I've gotten. So 86% of 25 to 50 is 21.5 to 43 billion. You get that many new blood cells every single day. Most of them are red blood cells, erythrocytes. If that didn't happen, class, you'd be dead. You got to have red blood cells. And your body produces them in a massive amount. It's incredible. Another big source of new cells that mitose is your skin. Out of all of that, what did I say, 25 to 50 billion? 1 billion a day is skin cells. And I'm just going to be brief here. Your skin has layers. Probably you girls know that much better than us men. We could care less about taking care of our skin. But you do know, don't you, that the outer layer of your skin is mostly dead cells? Because as the cells are mitosed down underneath at about 5 levels down, they move up. And as they move up, they change their dimensions and their structure. And by the time they get to the top here, they're interlocked and really tough, which allows your skin to keep a lot of stuff out. Your skin's the most important organ you have, class. It protects you from all kinds of things. But it's because it's got dead skins. Kids, take a bath, would you please? 1 billion of your cells died today. And you slough off about that many. So you start to stink. So if you don't believe it, well, you better believe it. I thought I'd do a little calculations. That's 694,000 per minute, or 11,600 per second dead skin. So it doesn't take long to be a mess. Is mitosis important, folks? Critically important. Now what we're going to do with this video is we're going to go back and watch it again. So let's go, Jacob. Here we are back at the beginning. And this time, instead of focusing on the whole picture, Jacob, are you awake? I'm not doing anything. It isn't. You see what I mean about this, don't you? Oh, there we go. We're back in business, I hope. Or is this just doing the first thing again? Yeah, it is, I think. Okay, you get to watch it again. It's okay, look up there. Keep watching. You're getting to watch mitosis before your eyes. But I hope it now will continue. Just let it keep going, Jacob. Don't stop it. All right, we're starting over now. So here you are back in the same position, and now we're going to focus in on one chromosome right here. You know there's lots of chromosomes in humans. We're going to look at one. So there we are. Stop right there just a second. Can you tell, class, that there are 2 copies? There's one behind and one in front. Can you see that? The copy's already been made. And this is one of your chromosomes. So we're watching one. The same thing is happening to all the others. You understand? All right, so now we're going to go down into a closer look. Do you see these things here? These are called the microtubules. Critically important. You can't have mitosis without it. So let's go. Go, Jacob. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to come focus in on these. See this dark red here? This is Drew Barry again, and he loves to color stuff. It's not dark red, class. He does that because that's where all the action is. It's called a kinetochore. That's right down in here. And there's all kinds of, what do you think, class, in here doing work? Proteins, a bunch of them. Do we have time to list them all? No, we do not. But we're going to kind of focus in on this and go closer, so you keep watching as we come in on now the kinetochore right here. All right, can you see all the activity in there? Stop right there just a second. You see, these are the microtubules, and they're being built, class, out of, what do you think? Proteins, of course. And they're being constructed because you absolutely have to have them to allow that separation to take place when you want to mitose. So these are being built, and if you'll follow my picture, way over here, that same microtubule is being torn down and recycled, just like any government operation. They just built it, now they're tearing it down. Only in the cell, that's critically important, because if you left all those microtubules during mitosis, the cell would get conglomerated with highways. Can't have it. But folks, that cell's recycling is just perfect. Our recycling is not so good. But theirs is in the cells. It's used again effectively. and doesn't have to get rid of about 50% of it. So that's happening right here. There's a busy factory building microtubules, tubules. That's important. What else is happening? Well, down in here, there's all kinds of activity taking place to prepare this thing for movement. Go ahead. All right, keep watching. And you notice it's all red. And you know how Drew Barry likes to turn things green when they go. So he's going to turn all this green as soon as it's time to go. But how does the thing know when to go? It's because you got proteins actively engaged in here that time things, class. So they'll know when it's time, and watch, it's going to turn green. Stop right there. Can you see the green? That does not happen, class. But the proteins that are there have been activated to do what they're supposed to do at the right time. Don't ask me to explain the timing of this, but there's a process by which proteins can time things. They can keep time better than you can and me. It's amazing stuff. So here we go. We're busy now to get ready, and the actual division is going to take place, and here's what you're going to see. Activity on these microtubules is important to make that division take place. There's all kinds of things happening, about which we'll tell you about 1/20th, if that much. Let's go. First of all, you need to watch, because there's little Dynene walkers that are going to start walking down these microtubules in this direction. And if you'll watch carefully, there's little kinesin walkers going the other way. See these guys? Those are Dynene walkers. Stop right there. Hang on. Up here's a kinesin walker. He's going that way. Folks, kinesin walkers always go the opposite way of Dynene walkers. I don't know why that is, but it's the case. Maybe kinesins are better going east and the others are better going west. I don't know. It's not always that way, but it is always that they're going opposites. But here's the Dynene walker. You see him? Go just a little further, Jacob, just a little bit. Watch his feet. Keep going. Stop. Can you see he's doing this? We know the chemistry of how that works. If you had an extra class with me, I'd explain to you the chemistry of how he walks and why it has to be on a microtubule, because it does. But there's chemistry behind it. It's just normal chemical processes. But the guy's walking, carrying stuff, class. But there's no purpose behind this, says Richard Dawkins. Oh, yes, there is a purpose behind it. He is allowing mitosis to take place, which allows you to live. And if it didn't happen, you'd be dead. And we knew nothing about kinesin and Dynene walkers 20 years ago. So I can forgive Charles Darwin in many respects. And these kinesin walkers are even more interesting. This is a little more complex, but you see all this stuff up here? A great portion of that is, what do you think, class? That he's carrying proteins that need to be over here, not over there. And in the process, the kinesin walkers are carrying stuff this way that doesn't need to be over there. And all the while they're working together. And look, this is a busy place. And do you think he's portraying it at the right speed? If you do, you're crazy. It goes 10 times faster than that. Lots of stuff going on. Go ahead. You see these little blue guys here? What do you think they are? Call it out. Proteins. And they help keep the microtubules in place. See that? But you see they also have legs? They're walking along with it. All right, now we're back to the big picture. This is all going down inside here. You cannot see this with the naked eye or even with good microscopes, but it's happening. And here we go. Once the time is right, they separate out and move to the poles, so that one, and we're back to this now, we were looking at this one chromosome. It's happened to all of them. And one cell then becomes 2 cells. And may I offer a public apology to every mitosis cell for the miserably incomplete job I did of explaining that. But is it enough to make you be in awe? It should be. And you just understand when you walk out of here, you don't know one half of the story about that. But you can sure go read about it. I have a bibliography of about 100 books. And they're fascinating. Okay, Jacob, let's move forward. I can't make it move. Okay, there we go. So for tonight, I'm having only one other video. It's this one. Because let's see, do I have a slide in between there? No, that's it. All right, let me back up. There we go. I want to talk to you just briefly about the bacterial flagellum. First of all, a flagellum is a promontory that comes off of a body that rotates, that allows it to move around. So it's like a tail. And it rotates like this. So it's a rotary thing. And in order for a rotary to rotate, what do you need? Not just, don't say proteins, but you do need proteins. But what do you need to make a rotary rotate? You need a motor, don't you? Right. So there are rotary motors that humans have produced. But this one is way better than any human ever produced. And it's found inside of a bacteria. Okay? Now, when my wife, my dear Marilyn, heard me present this the first time, she said, "Sweetheart, you lost me in the first 30 seconds because you need to make it come alive. You need to make it real. So I want all eyes on me. Everybody looking at me? I want you to understand what I'm about to talk about. Are you familiar with E. coli? E. coli is dangerous. You eat too much of it, you are dead. Food can get infected with E. coli, can it not? It can get inside you and it can kill you. What you probably didn't know is that your biome in your gut, pardon the expression, has lots of E. coli in it. It's a strain of E. coli that is very beneficial to human beings. It's not you, but they're living inside of you, and you'd be dead if they weren't. E. coli is one of the most important bacteria that we've discovered. There are thousands of bacteria types. E. coli has been studied more than any of them. In fact, I think this object, this rotary filament of the bacteria, E. coli, has been studied more than any other thing. Why is it so important? First of all, E. coli can kill you. We don't like that. So we know to figure out how to kill it, or to at least control it, right? But the other thing is, it's also critically important to our life. So we want to know everything there is to know about those little guys. So we've studied this a lot, to the point that I'm about to describe to you, not because I did it, but because people have explained it and even made a video about it. This is how it works. And if you don't believe me, go read the books for yourself. I mean, I haven't done the experiments. I'm believing what the scientists tell me what they've learned. So, I'm talking to you, class, about something that's critically important to life and death, that's in every one of you, swimming around in your intestines right this second. Did I get that across? Okay, so is this an important subject? I think so, and I'm trying to show you a little bit about how that works. So that's what we're going to do. And here is the video. This video was made by a Japanese company, and they spent years putting this together and, of course, making the studies that allowed them to know what's happening. So the first thing what they do is show you a bacteria swimming around in a medium. So let's go. Here's one kind of bacteria. Can you see the flagellum there behind it? It's helping it swim. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Watch the guys that come in next. These are E. coli. Stop. E. coli are Oh, I messed you up, Jacob. His job is to recover me as quickly as he can when I do stupid things. So, see there, he got me right back. I love that. Let me see if I can not do that again. Here come the E. coli, and look how fast they're going. Stop right there, Jacob. All right, these guys have sometimes 4, sometimes 8, sometimes 10 flagella stringing off from them. And what they do is wrap around each other, so you have, let's just say if there's 4 flagella wrapped around one another, and then they go. So it's like, whoosh. These guys can travel 60 bacterial body lengths. Let me see. I got to get my statistic right. These are critically incredible little creatures. And I've got my statistics right here. It can travel 60 cell lengths in 1 second. You know how fast a cheetah can run? Yes. It can run as fast as 25 body lengths in a second. A cheetah can. 25 cheetah body lengths. These are much faster than a cheetah. They can travel 60 of their body lengths in a second. Here's some other statistics, class. These little guys, with their rotary motor and those little filaments that they're flopping around behind them, the motor rotates anywhere from 6,000 to 17,000 revolutions per minute. That doesn't mean anything to most of you, but I did a little research. The fastest racing engine of the best race cars we've got go at most 15,000 RPMs. This little motor can go up to 17,000. The normal car's motor is 6,000 RPMs. And these guys are 6,000 to 17,000. So that means that motor's turning around that fast and driving that filament. Here's even more amazing. The filament itself that is being driven by that motor can go up to 1,000 RPMs or 17 rotations per second. Everybody's eyes up here. Yeah, no, I can't. Can't do it. And here's the amazing thing. I'm not doing that again, but it's going this direction, clockwise. In microseconds, it can stop and reverse and go back the same speed. Microseconds. There is no human motor that can touch topside or bottom of that. And this is in a little one-celled organism. Put your thumb up, class, sideways, and look at the width of your thumbnail. Okay? You can line up almost 1,000 of those little bacteria across the width of your thumbnail. That's how tiny this guy is. And he's got a flagellum on him with a motor better than anything humans built. But isn't it interesting how small successive changes over millions of years produce something like this? It's ludicrous to even think you could believe that. But let's go on. Go, Jacob. What we're now going to do is convert to the cartoon, because you can't see down this small. So here we go. As cartoon's coming up here in just a second. Keep going. Here it is. Here's the cartoon. This is the bacteria blob. It doesn't look like that, but that's just a blob. And this is the flagellum right here. And here's the hook. In just a moment, Jacob, it's going to say hook and filament. So when that does stop. So here's filament, and here's... Are we going? Keep going. I want you to go just a little further. I'm sorry. I messed him up somewhere or another. Oh, no, we're back to the beginning again. All right, Jacob, recover. Oh, there you go. Look at what he did. I love that. All right. I don't care if it says hook. I'm telling you, this is a hook. That's the filament. This is the hook. What's important about that, class, is that hook is critical because it connects the filament to the motor. Right? Can I tell you a statistic here? When this thing is constructed, right here, it has exactly 120 protein units that make this up. The hook. 120. How does it do that? it counts somehow. All right, there's the filament, and it's hooked by these connector proteins, and then this is can you see these are all different colors? That means it's a different. Thank you. That was slow, but okay. Let me say it again. These are different colors, so that means they're different proteins. Folks, there are numerous different proteins in this bacterial flagellum system. Each one has a specific task that it does precisely and that the others can't do. That's like having a worker in your pharmacy that can only make the prescriptions exactly right. Or you did compounding too, probably, didn't you? Somebody that can do compounding and is an expert at it. These proteins all have their own specific job. Now, let's see what you can do, Jacob. Is it going to go for me again? Oh, no, this is not good. We went back to the beginning. Well, there we are. Okay, we're back to the hook. All right, now notice as we go down through here, look at all these different parts. That's the cell wall right there. So this thing goes right down through the cell wall, and it's got a whole bunch of parts. You're going to see that come up here in just a minute. Here's the rod. Here's a bunch of rings, and this is the inner membrane, the peptidoglycan layer, and the outer. Stop right there. There's 3 layers. That little guy has skin with 3 layers. And each one of those layers is critically important. And did you notice this thing here in the middle? That's called the stator. Every rotary motor that's ever been invented has to have a stator. Because when you rotate, what happens? You have vibration. Look, if you're going that fast, you're going to be shaken. This thing would shake itself to death in microseconds if it didn't have a stator that stabilizes it. So it's got a stator that, notice it's hooked to the peptidoglycan layer all the way around. This goes all the way around. And it's hooked to that layer. And it's stabilized. So it can rotate that fast. It's amazing. Keep going, Jacob. So there's the stator I was talking to you about. And next is the rotor down here. This is the actual motor mechanism. And you see all those different colors? Okay, stop right there. That means it's different what class? Proteins. A bunch of different proteins here. So here is the thing that I want to blow you out of your seat. Not only does this little creature have the most amazing motor in the universe, I scared him to death. Professor of MIT, Howard Burtz is his name. I may have gotten that wrong, but he says it's the most exotic and efficient engine in the world. And I've already told you some of the reasons for that. Here's the thing that I want you to see that's beyond imagination. When that little bacteria mitoses, when he divides and makes 2, the division does not produce the flagellum. In other words, when he divides, the flagellum goes away. And you have 2 new bacteria cells, but they have to build the flagellum from scratch. We know that because we've watched them do it. And these Japanese folks that did this video have mapped the stages of what it does to build it. And class, I'm telling you, this little guy builds those motors and the flagellum from the bottom up as if it were building a tower on a college campus. In order, exactly, precisely, each piece at a time. And if you mess it up, you can go and mess with things and it messes it up. It doesn't build the flagellum and then it dies. So class, not only does this little bacteria have one of the most amazing motors in existence in the universe, it constructs it from scratch every time it divides by itself. Now, isn't it interesting how over millions of years this little creature has evolved the possibility of building the most advanced motor in the history of mankind by itself, one step at a time. Folks, the thing doesn't work one step at a time. It works as a unit. And they sit around and talk, well, maybe during the evolutionary process it did something else, and we've got some examples of other things like it. Maybe over time it did this first and then that and then that. There are so many fairy tales made up about this kind of stuff. I can make up a story, but there is no scientific evidence for how such a thing can evolve by the Darwinian method of natural selection, acting on natural variation. There it doesn't exist. So I want you to watch, class, because they're going to show you how the building is constructed. And by the way, I looked at the clock. I can't help it. And you're going to love this. Go, Jacob. We're building the motor. Here we go. I hope. Oh, we're back to the beginning again. Oh, my. That's close. Get a little farther over. There you go. A little more. The Japanese are giving you trouble. Everybody I've worked with on this has had a little bit of trouble with this one. Somehow the Japanese technicians on this made it harder. I don't know why or how. But here we go, back in the front again. Oh, here we go. But that's already past part of it. Can you back up a little bit? A little more. Just a little more, please. Okay, forget it. I will start there. Stop. Don't go anywhere. This is the first thing that's built, class. It's called the MS ring. That's got exactly 26 copies of a specific what? Protein. Can you see all the different layers here? There's 26 copies of that protein. That's built first. Class, when you build a tower, don't you have to do the foundation first? Dig a hole and then get everything ready. You don't do any building till you do all that. Well, in this case, you build that first. And it does it. That means you got to bring in that particular protein at the right time and build that. Go ahead now. Please don't go back to the beginning. Oh. All right, he's back there at least. Let's go. Oh, my. Yeah, just move it over a little bit. That's good. That's called the MS ring. Keep going. All right, the next thing is the Fly-G protein. You notice it's a different color? Different protein. You want to guess how many copies? 26 copies of Fly-G. Next, keep going. Don't stop it. Fly-M and Fly-N proteins. Exactly how many copies do you think? 26. Next, the rod is built going right up the middle. See that white? That's a different what class? Protein. And then it builds a cap, which is another different protein. What did the cap for? The cap is to drill a hole through the cell wall. You think that's helpful for a bacteria to drill holes through his wall? No, that'd kill him. So watch. While it's drilling that hole, you watch what happens. Keep going. Those are the rod proteins and the rod cap. It's drilling right on up there. The stator's already been constructed. And now, you see those rings? Stop. They form instantly at the right time, so when you drill the hole, you don't kill the little guy. Timing is perfect. But what you don't know is most of the proteins are shoved up through this rod, and they come up this way. Not those guys. They have to be brought in from the outside at the exact right time to fill that hole. And by the way, this one right here, the P ring, can only come if it has a chaperone what? Yes. Do you know what a chaperone protein is? It's a protein that takes a hold of another protein and leads it where it is supposed to go and puts it in place. This video doesn't show the chaperone, but there is one for that particular protein, so that you don't kill the little man while he's building his flagellum, which is the only thing that's going to keep him alive. Does this sound like a plan, class? Something that was designed? Keep going. Because now we're up here at the top, and there's another cap that's formed. That's called a hook cap. That's the cap that builds the hook. I told you there's exactly 100, stop. There's exactly 120 copies of a specific protein melded together in a form that makes it strong, powerful, a little bit flexible. That is a critical piece. And then when it gets finished, it dismisses the hook cap because it's been used. And guess what it does with that? It recycles it for future use. Keep going. And then notice, this is the first filament junction protein number 1, filament junction protein number 2. They have to be there or you can't hook it up to the filament. Next, we get another cap, the filament cap. Stop right there. I got to tell you about this one. I'm going to call it a girl. She's got 5 pieces up here. Can you see it's like a star? And 5 legs. I don't have 5 legs, so I can't show you everything. But that little lady has the job of constructing the filament, which is made of, you see the color? That's a different, the protein is filamin. It's critically important that the filament is made out of filamin, because filamin is perfect for a long object that needs to flop around, be extremely strong and tensile. It's the best stuff that could possibly be made for this. And it's made up of pieces. And this little lady guides the pieces. So watch, everybody. You will watch and her legs lift up like this. Only it goes way faster than that. And each time she lifts a leg, one of those protein pieces comes up the space that her leg left behind. And the next one goes to the next one because she lifts her leg again. And she's called Twinkle Toes. So there you go. Watch Twinkle Toes build that thing. Look at how many units there are. Isn't that gorgeous? And that thing is strong. It whips around, and it's like 20 to 30,000 units. And then there's 4 of them. And it built it from scratch. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in your wildest imagination, can you conceive of a situation where something as complex and involved as that happened by the blind forces of physics, acted upon by natural selection? You don't need to explain that, would Peter Atkins say? Once you have molecules that can reproduce themselves and maybe make some changes, you're going to get elephants. That's less stupid than this, I think. This was design, class, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and if I can't convince you with that, it's hopeless. It's a multiple protein process. Each protein is complex, suited for its function. Each machine is highly sophisticated, intricate, dynamic, and elegant, and these machines are spontaneously self-assembled in the cell. So not only do you have to count for the most complex machine that exists on Earth, but they have a factory that builds it. But isn't it interesting how nature just did that? And there are thousands of them in every living cell. We haven't touched the top of them. We haven't touched anything. You know why I get frustrated? I go home at night and ask God's forgiveness, because I feel like I've done a miserable job of getting the point across to you of the kind of God we're serving. I cry about it. So I want to close by introducing you to one of the foremost nano engineers in the world. His name is Dr. James Tour of Rice University. Dr. Tour is a Messianic Jew. He openly proclaims, if you want to be a Christian, you need to believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You can go to his website at Rice University, and one of the big things there is his conviction that Christ was raised from the dead, and here's why and why you should believe it. I love that. He and I don't agree on everything religiously, but he's an unabashed believer in the God of heaven. And he's working with this stuff all the time. He knows nano. He's done lots of fascinating things. He has hundreds of patents. He started people in business on a host of different things that are helpful to humanity. Here's one thing. Graphene is a one layer of carbon layer. It's like carbon atoms in one layer that's one carbon atom thick. That's impossible. But we've learned how to produce graphene and even mass produce it, and he's helped with that. He's also figured out ways to use it for fascinating stuff to help our society. For example, he took a little rat, a mouse, and he cut his spinal cord right here. Whoops, that's not too good. I'm about to cut my own. He cut his spinal cord, class, severed it, put some graphene in the separation and some other chemicals, sewed him back up, and turned him loose in his environment. And over the next several months, he grew back 80% of his effectiveness with that spine. Somehow that graphene helped meld that stuff back together. I don't know that anybody understands it yet, but he's trying to figure out medical uses for it. Here's another one he figured out. You can take graphene and add it to concrete, and you can use a lot less concrete for the same strength by sticking the graphene in it. So class, that's another potential use for coal. Think that might be important for our country and around the world, because the coal industry has suffered, partly because of pollution. But what if you could use a whole bunch of coal to make graphene to help make concrete, needing less concrete? Well, that's the kind of stuff he's trying to do. So he's got a team of about 20 or 30 at Rice, brilliant young men and women working with him to do all kinds of things at the nano level. So they decided, if you're going to have all this wonderful nano stuff and nano engineering, why don't we make a nano car? Wouldn't that be fun? And so they did. There, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the early cars they made. That is one molecule, and it's got 4 wheels. It's got a rotational system. It's got that's what drives it. Right there is the shaft, and you can move that thing around in circles by light or chemicals, and then it makes those guys wheel. And here's pictures of it moving around. And see it down here? That was one of his early cars that he made at the nano level. That's impossible. No, it isn't. He did it. And so did a bunch of other people. People started making nano cars. And of course, if you've got a car, mine's better than yours, isn't it? So how do you determine whose is better? You have a race. So I want to tell you, April 28, 29, 2017 in Toulouse, France, we had the first international nano car race. Anybody ever heard of it? Probably not, but they had one. Austria, U.S., this is University of Graz and Rice. This was their team. France, Germany, Japan, Switzerland, and U.S. Ohio University all entered nano cars. And I'm pleased to tell you, class, that the Austria-U.S. team won the whole thing. Their little car went 150 nanometers in 1.5 hours. And that's 100 nanometers per hour. That's whipping along. You remember how big a nanometer is? 1/1000th of a meter. So we went 150 of those. It's about like that in an hour and a half. For that little guy, that's whipping along. The next best one was from Switzerland. They went 133 nanometers in 6.5 hours. And everybody else gave up. You know why, class? It is extremely difficult to make a nano car. that's worth anything. That's hard. So here's some comments about that. Well, here's another picture. I got to show you this. The first generation of his nanocar looked like this. And what he found out is this thing would rotate. The first generation would rotate 1.5 revolutions per hour at 60 degrees. That's going nowhere, class. That means in an hour, it only went around 1.8 times. Man, that is so slow, you'd fall asleep before the... So they started over, and they built a second generation of nanocars. Notice that it had to have a rotor. See right here, there's the rotor. It had to have a stator. You've heard of that before. There it is. And then it had to have an axle, a couple of axles right here. And then it had to have the bay carbureting wheels, these. This second generation car, ladies and gentlemen, went 3 million revolutions per second. And that's the one that won the race. But here's what I got to tell you. To make that second generation, they started all over. And with their engineers thought through, what do we do now? And they reconstructed with their engineering thinking a new model. It turns out, class, if you look closely, the rotor over here and the rotor here, can you see the only difference there? What is it? See right there? No, it's not protein this time. No, that S right there is a sulfur atom. Can you see it right there? That's missing over here, isn't it? So this is a 5-carbon ring. That's a 5-carbon ring with a sulfur, so it makes it hexagonal, right? That is the only difference between those two cars. Did they know that when they started over to build another one? They had no idea. It's just what turned out. Because of their engineering genius, they created a new one that turned out to have only that one tiny change to make it go what? 3 million instead of 1.8 revolutions per hour. That's ingenuity by intelligence. Dr. Tour says the nanocars built by Rice University were much smaller, far less complex than the kinesin and dynein walkers and other molecular machines common in every living cell. He said, we haven't done doodly squat compared to what every cell does. Next, the Rice team has been working on nanocars for over 20 years. Took him 20 years to build one to win a race. With a team. Every molecular machine in living cells is much larger. Let me get my pointer here. Much larger, at least 10,000 times, much more complex, and much more sophisticated. Every molecular machine in living cells. This professor of nanoengineering, one of the best in the world, saying nature has done something way better than we have. Here is a taste of how much work and intelligence it took to produce the nanocar. So everybody's eyes on the screen. Because the guys that lost the race said, are you going to publish this so we can help us build better cars? He said, I already have. So he had published an article that came out just the month after that race. And here's page 1. I'll pause and let you read that. Do you see the headline? Details of one molecule characterization. You see that car is made out of one molecule. And this is the detailed chemical description of that one molecule. That's page 1, class. Are your eyes still on the screen? I'm going to go to page 2. That's a little better, isn't it? You can read that now. Tell me when you're finished. How about let's go on, right? Those 2 pages are part of an article that's 281 pages long that is full of information like that. Class, did it take a lot of intelligence and work to build that little silly car that all it can do is run around on silver and go 150 nanometers in an hour and a half? Did that take a lot of knowledge, planning, work, intelligence. In your wildest imagination, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, would such a thing be created without an engineer behind it? I don't think so. It's a reasonable conclusion that nanocars were designed by intelligent human engineers. Living cells with all of their thousands of nanomachines, which are far more intricate, complex, interdependent, and full of digital information, were surely designed by an intelligence far beyond anything we know. We call him God. And that is not unreasonable, class. It's more reasonable than it's ever been in the history of mankind. And folks who refuse to see it are going to give an answer to the God who made them one of these days. I would be in fear and trembling myself. I am in fear and trembling. Because I want to be in honor of that God. And folks, he has talked to us right here. Not just in the natural world, but he's shouting to us in the natural world. Loud and clear. I don't think there's a single person in this audience tonight that didn't hear him shouting, I'm here. And he's now told us exactly how he wants us to live, to be able to be with him forever. You want to miss that? If you're listening to this and you're not a believer in Jesus the Christ, may I beg of you to take the time to read the story of this book. Because it not only says God created the universe, it says God loved us so much that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And the same God said through Jesus Christ in John 14, I'm leaving, but I'm coming back. And when I come, I'll receive those who are mine to myself. And I've prepared a place for you. And you don't want to miss that. So the reason I love doing what I'm doing, beloved, is because in some small way I believe that it helps everybody that listens closely to have a greater sense of majesty about the God we are privileged to serve. So elders, thank you again for the invitation. And if you want more, I'm working on some new ones. Because there's more and more good stuff. If I were to come back in what are we set up for, 2028 already? It'll be on epigenetics. And it'll probably be 10 lectures. No, I'm kidding. But it could be. So again, thank you for your patience. I went way over, but I don't think you cared. I hope you didn't. And I hope you leave here lifted up and strengthened. And so that's my lesson for tonight.